The Royal St. Lawrence Yacht Club, or Royal for short, has been part of Montreal's athletic and social spheres for more than a century. The club is a place where professional and recreational sailors and powerboaters can go find community, competition, and a shared enthusiasm for the nautical sports. Located in the city of Dorval, a suburb of Montreal, the Royal was founded 21 years after Canada was in 1888. The club started as a place where keen sailors could organize small local regattas. At the time, the West Island of Montreal was used primarily by well-to-do families as a country getaway, as it was not touched by the urban sprawl and it had a quaint charm that reminded the Scots and the Englishmen of their homes back in the Queen's Country. The Royal St. Lawrence Yacht Club would become that getaway for the athletic businessmen of the late 19th century who didn't want to become softened by city life. The club was given royal status in 1894 by Queen Victoria, an honor that meant much more in those days than it does today.
It is one of the biggest yacht club with the biggest facilities. We have the tennis and the pool and the travel lift, and we have a lot of big boats here. So other yacht clubs up the lake cannot accommodate such big boats and with the depth of the water. So we are one of the main big yacht club. You look at other cities like Toronto, there's Royal Canadian Yacht Club, Royal Nova Scotia, Royal Vancouver. So we're on the map across Canada as one of the Royal clubs for Montrealers to come to.
The royal status of the club essentially guarantees its members reciprocity amongst the other royal clubs around the world. A close bond and a championing competitive spirit exists between the royal clubs to this day. To capture what the Royal St. Lawrence Yacht Club has meant to Montreal is a uniquely difficult challenge because it has meant so much to so many. So we will first explore what the club has meant to young people. We will look at the history of the Royal's educational programs and the impact they continue to do for Montreal and the greater Canadian sailing community. Before the junior squadron you see bustling before you, there were the Sea Scouts. The first of its kind in Canada, the Sea Scouts was an educational program for boys who wanted to learn how to sail, tie knots, and navigate. The program was eventually replaced with the Junior Squadron, which was founded in 1949 by Commodore George Hamilton.
I really liked the counselors and being out on the water all day and just sailing itself. I just love it.
The feel of the water is amazing. I like sailing because I can relax.
Some sports are just physical. This is also a mental sport. In an Opti, it's only one person, and I like that because it's you can do what you want.
Okay, we got it. Okay, Will, you turn.
An Opti is actually a floating bathtub with a sail. That's the best way to describe it. It was originally built to be a boat for kids, and you can make it out of 2 pieces of plywood. Something like that.
The Opti is the worldwide development class. All the kids around the world learn to sail and learn to race in the Opti. The idea is that they start very young, and until 15 years old, they'll be in the same boat. And what's very good about the Opti, the design of the boat itself hasn't changed a lot because it's a very good boat to learn to sail in, and they can take it out in very strong winds, and they can still handle the boat. They can still be comfortable sailing it.
When the program first began, the young sailors only had access to 5 vessels. Since then, the program's fleet has increased 8-fold. The philosophy of the club was to provide a fun summer for kids, teach them how to sail, and hopefully foster a lifelong interest in sailing and being a part of the sailing community.
Our Wet Feet program is the 5 to 7-year-old program, and what they learn is really the basic. They're just learning what a boat is, how a sail works, how the wind works. So it's really just an introduction into sailing, not trying to overwhelm them at all, but trying to introduce them to the sport and not be scared.
first time I do it, it was hard, but after like I can practice, so it's like less hard.
The first year, I hated it completely. I was scared to death. Like, I did not want to go out at all.
Yeah, my parents forced me.
Well, I didn't like it. I was just this other guy because on the first day when we went out, someone hit me in the back of the boat. So it kind of scared me, and I didn't want to go.
I was really scared, yeah. It's pretty overwhelming the first time because you have so many things to think about.
Terrified is normal. It's absolutely normal, even for the older kids. I know that when I grew up sailing, I was scared for at least the first 3 years. I didn't like it at all, and obviously, I've been here long enough that that's changed. But we definitely have to maneuver around that fear and really show them that sailing isn't scary, but it's a fun experience, and that there's instructors everywhere around you that can help whenever you're scared.
Watch your head, kids are gonna drive. Well done. Well done, Gabriel. Good job. Nice and easy. Your sailboat into the corner, though. All the way. Good, Georgie. You know what? Sit on the other side. You're already out of irons. That's fine.
How the CanSail program works now is that there are levels, CanSail 1 through CanSail 6, and they can be achieved in a single-handed boat, which is a boat with just one person sailing by themselves, or a double-handed boat, which is a boat where 2 people sail together. They progress from really just the basics and the fun aspects of sailing. Not to say that the harder aspects aren't fun, but they become a little bit more intense, and generally racing is involved in the higher levels. So after Wet Feet, they move on to our Learn to Sail program. It's basically from 8 to 12 years old, and they also sail in an Optimist, which is the same small boat, but they're by themselves. We mostly teach them CanSail 1, which includes tacking and jibing. They learn how to right a boat that has been dumped, and they learn how to sail around a course. So we place buoys in the water, and they learn how to do a figure 8 initially. That's the easiest, and then they learn how to tack and jibe, and that is when courses become harder.
Do those zigzags like you did. Control your drive. You see the 3 ropes there, the main sheet?
It doesn't take that long to like learn everything. Like I picked it up pretty quickly, but like I'm still learning new things that are still pretty hard because it's not just like pushing and pulling. There's a lot to it.
When you sail, you learn really to sail, and you know how to sail.
You're good, you're good, you're good. Like that, that's fine, Alex, that's fine.
The one main thing that I really need to improve on is pulling in my sail. I don't pull it in all the way, so I can't catch the full speed that I should be getting. And then, when tacking, I usually sometimes forget, and I face the back of the boat when I'm supposed to face the front.
Well, you can obviously dump it without wanting to, like if you could hit a big wave or something. But the best thing to do is just go to the front of your boat and like pull your mast. And then you have to swim to the back and pull on your dagger board, and then you have to get in from the back. This year, I learned how to do roll tacks, which is a lot of fun because it's just a tack, but much quicker. It helps you turn quickly. It's a fun thing because like you're almost tipping, but then you're not. It's really cool.
From there, if you're still of Optimist size, which is under 14 years old and around 120 pounds, you can go into our Learn to Race program. So that is where they do CanSail 2 and 3. It's a little bit more rigorous. They learn the finite details of tacking and jibing and how to race, and a lot more about how to spot gusts, which is when the wind picks up in certain areas, and what that gust will do to your sail, and how to adjust the parts of your boat for each wind condition. So when it's really windy, what you have to do, and when it's not so windy, what you have to do to make sure you're still going the fastest.
Although the junior sailors haven't had to wear a uniform in several decades, they still partake in an old military tradition.
The first thing in the morning is probably get in, get your life jacket, and then flip your boat, and then rig your whole boat, and then we have fall in.
Fall in consists of the raising of the club's flag, the sailors splitting into various groups, and any formal morning announcements.
When we're done with that, we go back in. We just take the sprit pole down. We have lunch and everything. Then we come back, we meet, we do another lesson, and then we go out again. When we get back, we de-rig the whole boat. And then we have fall out, which is practically the same thing, but you lower the flag.
And now for a quick sailing lesson. One of the first things all new sailors learn are the points of sail. A sailboat can sail in any direction except for directly up into the wind. If it were to directly face the wind, the sail would fail to catch any of the wind and it would simply flap like a flag. To avoid this, sailors angle their boat's direction in relation to the wind so that they can fill their sails with good, clean air. This allows them to move forward even if the wind is almost coming straight towards them. Another freaky thing about sailing is how you control the direction of the boat. While on larger boats or keel boats, you may have a wheel. On smaller boats or on dinghies, you have a tiller. The tiller is somewhat special because when you pull it one way, the boat goes the other way. This is always one of the skills that trumps both kids and adults when they start sailing. Finally, sailors like to rename things. Perhaps it was all those boring nights at sea back in the 16th century, but for some reason, sailors have a different name for just about everything you may find on a boat. Right and left is starboard and port. Pulleys are called blocks, rope is called line, and for most sailors, rum and cokes are called mandatory.
Growing up in like the sailing community was totally different than growing up like without sailing or anything. Like with school friends just like lie down in their bed like the whole day and like do homework and stuff. But sailing, you wake up early to come here and you want to race for it. And I think that's what's great with the attitude of this team because you know like these people really want it and it's not like people who don't care but they're doing it obliging because their parents want you to do it.
Every morning I get up, I'm looking forward to going to sailing, not like, oh, I have to go today.
I enjoy sailing because it's physical and mental. It's sort of like checkers on water would be the best way to describe it.
After that, if they are still interested in racing in an Opti size, our program then goes on to the Opti race team. They race and they achieve standings on the regional, like so Quebec level, and also national and international level.
That's an example of winning the battle but losing the war, okay? The best thing about coaching Optis is that because it's a development class, that's where they learn the fundamentals of racing, right? It's really where you can get them to be passionate about it and keep sailing as a sport that they want to do for a lifetime. I have kids that play soccer, that play hockey, that do all sorts of other sport, and I'm not asking them to quit other sports to do that, but my hope is always that I can get them to like sailing just as much as they like those more popular sports.
We have a really nice venue here because it can be very, very not windy, but it can be very windy. So we have a little bit of everything. It's not like I'm clueless, like it's always super heavy air and like windy. And when I arrive someplace and there's no wind and can hardly, don't know any techniques, it's like we know a bit of everything.
You gotta cut across and not slow down, that's the best way, right?
I've been sailing since I'm 6 years old here. I've been racing since I'm 7, so I've had a lot of experience.
I love being around my friends and everything and having coaches to tip me and you're not alone in a bubble a bit, you're on a team and they help you a lot. That's what I really love about it.
The Opti class is definitely where you have the most team spirit. To coach a group that's really cohesive and it works together and that really tries to learn from each other, that's really a great thing.
Being part of the Royal is sort of like a little family, especially when you're in a team. You're always with your team because I think we already had, 2 weekends where we were not racing at an event or something. So we're almost always together, so it's like a little family.
During the summer, the racing teams travel to various sailing cities across North America, competing in prestigious regattas and making their home club very, very proud.
We get the sequence going in 30 seconds. The sailing can be confusing to look at from a spectator point of view, especially if you're a non-sailor, say, looking at a course and seeing boats just going around. Can be wondering what's going on. So a typical practice race, one of the course configurations that we could use is what I like to call a mid-course start race. 3, 2, 1. So basically what they do is they line up over here and they sit just below the line, and at go, they cross the line. Generally, again, as I was saying with the points of sail on starboard tack, and they head upwind. And depending on where they are, they tack upwind up until they reach that mark, the windward mark. Then they round that mark, head all the way downwind, round the mark, and then sail back up to cross the finish line. Obviously, this is, say, one track that one boat could have followed around the course, but the idea is that all the boats will be following different tracks, going in different directions, and the one that will going the fastest and taking advantage of all of the different aspects that come into play during a race will end up crossing this line in the end.
First of all, you go to the Canadian Nationals. That is to qualify for one of these regattas. And it's like you want to qualify because you want to see like different countries and like how they perform, and you want to go see like these crazy places like Antigua because you want to know how it feels to race not against like the fleet that you know, but a fleet that you do not know and you want to try.
Summer being the prime time of sailing, it leaves us a smaller window that we can spend time on the water, which is why the kids here end up sailing their whole summer. That's what they do from the second they leave school to the second they go back to school.
My first regatta was try at Point Claire Yacht Club. The furthest I have ever been in a regatta was Nova Scotia, Lunenburg.
I went to Antigua this summer on the Canadian team.
I went once for Italy at Worlds in Europe.
I've been to Nova Scotia. I've been to the United States a lot. We just came back from Salem, and we go to Kingston a lot. So the sport really brings you around the country.
Legends of the sailing community were never few and far between at the Royal St. Lawrence Yacht Club. Year after year, stories emerged from junior sailors that would eventually become folklore amongst this tightly knit sailing community. Like the editor of the club's centennial history book recounts, throughout the decades, the essential elements have remained the same. But, as with most things involving people, the overall character has varied with the personalities in charge. Many graduates remember the military spit and polish era of Stephen Marshall. Others still chuckle about the instructor who, driven to distraction by a student, more intent on cruising a couple of girls in a boat than working his seamanship, took drastic measures. The instructor took the offender aboard his crash boat, sped out to one of those large buoys in the deep channel, and deposited the lad on it. No account specifies how long the hapless student was left clinging to the buoy to reflect on his sins.
If you're kind of too old or too big and you start learning to sail at an older age, you go into our beginner double-handed program. So 2 people per boat, and you learn beginner stuff there. But it is also, if you've gone through the Learn to Sail program and you don't want to race, you also go into that. So it's a little bit of a mix of newcomers and people that are just starting in the 420s, which is our bigger boat, which is just a bigger bathtub with 2 people on it. But it features the trapeze, which is where you wear a harness and kind of hang off the side of the boat to make sure that your weight is out to keep the boat flat. And then it also has the spinnaker, which is the sail that comes out at the front that is generally colored, that you use when going downwind. Helps with your speed a lot. And then after that, there's our 420 race team. And the 420 race team is a lot like the Optimus race team, but in our bigger boats.
420 is the youth double-handed class, so it's the first boat most people race when they're learning to sail with another individual in the boat. So different from an Opti or a laser, which is single-handed, so just one sailor in the boat. Because it's a double-handed boat, the kids really develop kind of a great relationship with each other. I really like to focus on the double-handed aspect, so learning to rely on your teammate and really being able to trust them. Certain things you have to kind of speak constantly about to make sure you're on the same page, but also developing that ability to not speak and still understand what your buddy's doing and why he's doing it, and having faith that he's always going to be doing it. So I think that's one of the best things about double-handed sailing. As far as transferring those to life skills, it's all about teamwork. Everything in that boat is about teamwork. What's kind of nice about the 420 is it's not the fastest boat out there. It's a little heavy, it's a little sluggish, a little fat in the middle, so you really have to learn a lot on how to kind of get the boat moving and keep it moving. And because the boats aren't very fast, it's always very tactical, so the boats are always really close together. So there's a lot of technique to learn, there's a lot of tactics to learn, and that's what I really think is kind of special about the boat as a racing class. We got to travel a lot this year. We got to go to Nova Scotia, did a big trip there. We went to Hyannis in Cape Cod, where we raced against some really, really good American sailors, and that was kind of an eye-opener because we're pretty strong. We're one of the strongest clubs in Quebec easily. We're regularly on the podium, one of the best in Canada. But when we travel to Europe or we travel to America, where they have these huge programs that train year-round, that's sort of where we kind of get put in our place a little bit. So it's always really interesting. It's good for the kids, brings them down a little bit. And then at the end of the year, we went to Youth Nationals in Kingston and did quite well there as well. It's always a big event, probably the biggest regatta in Canada for dinghies. Another big exciting thing that sort of started in the past few years is college sailing in Canada, which is a huge, huge deal in America. And McGill and Queens have been racing in the American League for a long time. But now we're developing this Canadian League, which is opening up a lot more opportunity for people to keep racing after they kind of class out of high school. It gives them just a team to train with, which is the biggest thing, because it's hard to just keep training on your own all the time without a coach and without teammates.
Parents coming in for the first time who maybe haven't sailed before think this looks like such a difficult sport, and it is, but once you master like these 1-2 things that take a few days for kids, you can really go far with it.
Because it's a small community, we have a lot of contact with all the different levels of competition, right? So the kids will go through the program and they see the athletes on the Quebec sailing team, they see me train here, so they have something to aspire to. The kids I now coach, one of their old coaches is now competing and doing an Olympic campaign. So they really can have that hope that one day they will actually get there too, and that really creates a dream and learn to aspire to higher levels of competition.
I would like to qualify for the international events, which are usually in different countries.
I would like sailing to take me towards like maybe the Olympics or like Opti Worlds. That's like my goal that I want to do.
I hope that I will become an advanced sailor. It's sort of like my goal.
I'd like to continue doing this for a long time.
Because if you qualify, you could be on the Canadian team. and you get some cool stuff like a life jacket and a hat and clothes, and also to like see lots of people from different countries.
I would like to compete and go to Olympics maybe. You never know.
My goal is eventually to make Team Canada.
Yacht clubs like the Royal, very important for the progression of sailing programs, especially junior sailing programs. It gives the young athletes sort of a bit more exposure to the sport, absolutely. So we have a chance to get them on keel boats, see what grown-ups kind of sail, especially. But it also sort of exposes the older side of the club to what's still happening in the youth. It shows them, that these classes are still active, that our club is still a competitive club in racing, which is really important because it very much is, we all progress together. So as the kids get older and better and older and better, then the older guys who go around the world and race their keel boats, they start looking at them as potential crew. So I think it's really important to kind of keep the yacht squadron as a big community.
When Canadians think about their community, most don't immediately think of their local yacht clubs and marinas. However, sailing communities have been around for over a century. Most of Canada's population once came here on boats. Sailing is in our blood, as much as maple syrup is, although we may not realize it. The world of sailing is thousands of years old, and right now, during our short time in history, it's clubs like the Royal St. Lawrence that are keeping the community alive. Next episode, we explore the club's history of Olympians and follow 2 Olympian hopefuls. This program is dedicated to the memory of Ian Bruce, honorary life member of the Royal St. Lawrence Yacht Club. An officer of the Order of Canada and 2-time sailing Olympian, Ian was best known at home and abroad as the father of the Laser, the most popular sailboat the world has ever known. Ian Bruce was more than a remarkable sailor. He was a remarkable human being and a noteworthy contributor to the sport of sailing for more than 60 years in Montreal, throughout Quebec, across Canada, and around the world.